Will these new look time bandits get the big haul?
Is Kevin ever going to find his way home?
Will Taika Waititi's re-envisioning live up to the original 80s cult classic?
And ultimately, who ends up with the map?
Red and Red Real Reviews jumps through some portals to break down Apple TV's limited series, Time Bandits.
In her face, the mirror of your
I have 2.8% body fat. My body's like a microchip. A grain of sand could destroy it.
The man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
Someone will die.
Of fun.
And of murder.
So I told him to mark everything with the international symbol for gender. And,
Leslie, I typed your symptoms into the thing up here, and it says you could have network connectivity problems.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
My body's a microchip.
It's Halloween. That is really, really good timing.
Make believe I'm everywhere, giving in the light.
My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I should have been more specific.
I think it happens over a long period of time, just like piece by piece, you know?
I once forgot to brush my teeth for 5 weeks.
There is no middle ground.
I am the one who knocks.
Oh my God. The microchip has been compromised.
I want you to stand out. I want all of you to be as different as you can possibly be.
Written on the pages is the answer to a never-ending story.
Welcome back to another episode of Red and Red Real Reviews, the final episode of season 1 of our show, number 23, the Michael Jordan episode.
And I do not really, I know who Michael Jordan is, but he must have been number 23 on his jersey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. But yeah, it's our final countdown. Our last epi of the season. I know I can count on you for that nice little sound clip.
As long as the brain synapses work, yes. So this is an interesting one to wrap up season 1 because we're going to go back to your old faithful strategy from Roadhouse of taking something that's a remake of something from the 80s and that you never saw. So we're going to go back to your Roadhouse strategy of watching the new one first so you have no preconceived notions going into the new one. And I kind of curious what you thought of Time Bandits going in blind to this, because to me, this is one of my more favorite movies when I was a kid growing up. And it's kind of got a little bit, I'm not going to say it's like Pan's Labyrinth, but it's got a little bit of that feeling of something that would be very popular in a certain niche of society.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So,
I honestly, I didn't know the movie existed. Like, I've literally never heard mention of it until you said we should cover this, saying, oh, there's this Apple TV remake of this movie. And I was like, that's news to me because I've never heard of this. All my time at working at a video store, I worked at a video store for like 3 years in the mid 2000s. Never heard of it. It was never like a cult classic movie that people were looking for ever. So, I mean, I really went into it blind. Like I didn't know what it was about. Like, not to mention I had never heard the title before. And pretty quickly, it was probably, 5 minutes into it, I was kind of like, you know what, this is going to be fun. Because I just felt like the interactions with Kevin, the actor who plays him, like adorable kid, like just his little voice, like the little British kid, like just adorable. And I loved I loved his little interactions like with the parents, who we'll talk about more about the parents in a future topic. But I just found it to be very funny and well written, like really witty right away. So I mean, that was a testament to, of course, in the credits, I saw it was directed or written by either Taika Waititi or it was written by Jermaine Clement, who is from Flight of the Conchords, which kind of is a cult classic show, like a really old HBO show, if you know about it.
I do know of it, and that was something like I would see. I remember way back when I first joined Facebook and I would see a couple people write down their favorite shows, Flight of the Conchords. Like I don't know what this show is. At the time I didn't really have at the time I didn't have cable. I didn't have cable till I think junior year of high school. So HBO was kind of a foreign land to me. So this Flight of the Conchords thing, I know what it is, but I've never watched and I have no uh preconceived notions of that. So that one, seeing his name in the credits didn't ring any kind of bells to me.
Yeah, he's been in a couple movies too as an actor, but the Flight of the Conchords is really about like these two guys who like have a band, and it's about like their life and their band. So like it was it was like a comedy, but he's also writing songs, that are comedic. So I was kind of interested to see his writing from the point of view of like he's just writing for the screen. He's not writing songs or anything like that, which was like half of what Flight of the Conchords was.
Yeah, and speaking of like writing, direction, general flow of a show, this one had a very, I don't want to say strange, but interesting flow to me because it started off pretty high paced. It followed the movie fairly closely, not super closely, but
Mm.
well, actually, the first couple episodes actually pretty closely. Um, uh, but I felt like the pacing of each episode, the first couple felt good, and then it went through a phase of an episode or two where it was extremely fast paced and felt rushed, and
Mm.
then it kind of steadied out a little bit for the last few episodes. So it almost had the inverse bell curve. We always talk about a bell curve sometimes where show starts slow, picks up, and then kind of leaves you deflated at the end. This one almost kind of had like the inverse bell curve where it started out hot, went through this lull in the center, and then finished more strong.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, when I turned on the last episode, I was like, okay, so they're going to save his parents and then I looked at the runtime of the episode and I was like, in 32 minutes. Okay, so this is going to be pretty quick. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did kind of get that it was rushed at times. I mean, I wouldn't say it was slow at times because that wasn't really true, but to your point, we'll talk about it a bit later. Yeah, the pacing was a little bit odd where it was like, okay, why are you showing us this certain thing which doesn't further the story along, but like you're really like concentrating and focusing on this other certain thing that like, yeah, it's fun, but it's just the pacing is just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue because a big tenet to the original film, as far as jumping around, or of course, them jumping through all the portals and going to these different individual eras in time, and a big kind of subplot of the original film was Kevin's relationships with these different people he finds throughout history in these different eras,
Mm.
and I did find a lot of them in this series. They were kind of very undersung. They're just kind of like going on, and a lot of them they kind of jumped around and boop, okay, we're on to the next one. Whereas in the film, there were fewer of them. It didn't feel like there was a very small amount, but there are definitely fewer of them, and there was a more profound relationship with the main character. So a couple of them that I thought were very rushed, and it didn't feel like they added too much to the flow of the story, other than okay, we're here, okay, we're gone. The first one with Lady Chung, where they're on the ship, they kind of have a little bit of an argument, and then Kevin kind of, um, although you'd never actually see it, but almost kind of has like a butterfly effect moment where he tells her, "You're
Mm.
gonna lose this battle," and then they go ahead and they leave. And then another one where they go to the Trojan horse, they sneak into the horse. They have that kind of little comedic scene, and then they kind of get in, and there's no battle. They just kind of sneak around. They think they're all gonna steal a thing. I think it was the vase that they all steal the same thing of. Um, and then Kevin has this interaction with the soothsayer, which nobody else believes is a soothsayer, and then they leave. And then of course the dinosaur. They go back to the prehistoric times with the dinosaur, and
Yeah.
then they go up to Robin Hood's time, which was in the original film at with where they're interacting with Robin Hood. This time they're interacting with Sheriff of Nottingham, who's kind of a goofy, aloof character. And then the dinosaur kind of invades medieval times, and boop, the bandits are gone. And then the other one that doesn't necessarily gone quick, but when Saf goes to Japan and Kevin and the gang goes to New York City, it didn't feel like that one had a big resonating effect on the story. So, like, which ones of these periods did you feel that they didn't really add? They felt like they went too quick, or they didn't add anything to the flow.
I mean, I feel like what they maybe were trying to do was, I mean, these were decently short episodes, maybe 35 to 45 minutes. I don't think ones really went past that. So these were pretty short episodes. So what I think they were trying to do probably is put like one era or location per episode. Like that's kind of what it seemed like it was, because I wrote in my notes as I went along, like, oh, they go here, they're in China, then they're in the Trojan times, then they're in I would kind of write whatever era they're in, then they go through a portal and they leave. So it's like I felt like it was mostly one location per episode. Like maybe they were trying to just make it kind of easy and just like not put like three eras in an episode, because then it really would be chopped down. So I mean, we have them spending usually 25 minutes or so, within per location. So it would give enough of a story for that one episode. So I mean, that being said, like I had my favorite eras that there were. I loved like the caveman times. I just thought that whole thing was hilarious. And then and that kind of furthered the story along, because focusing on where Saffron had been living for 4 years. And then to your point, I feel like the Prohibition era of New York City in the 20s, that was a fun time, but it didn't really add to the story. I mean, it didn't really add things along that Penelope was mistaken for this, I forget what her name was, this, leader of a gang, basically. I didn't think that furthered the story along. Like, yes, it was entertaining. Yes, it was amusing, but it didn't really do anything.
And not just did we have a couple that didn't fuel the story, but the bandits weren't very successful in stealing anything. Like in the original Bandits, they did go to these eras and steal things and then move on. So they kept true to their identity. Whereas this one, it felt like it was always a dumb luck failure when they were trying to steal something, and then they wind up not being successful in that. So it kind of, when you have these points that are very rushed and they don't feel like they added anything, and then the bandits aren't being successful in what their identity is, it just feels like, well, why did we go here then? Why did we go to this area? There's no profound relationship, and the bandits didn't steal anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can kind of argue, like, the movie or the series is called Time Bandits. So what do? They go through time to steal things. They're bad bandits, though. They're not good at stealing. No. And they're not great at time either, because a Widget with his
read the map the whole time,
his mapping and navigation skills leave a little bit to be desired. So so yeah, it's kind of ironic that it's called Time Bandits, but they call themselves that, but they are bad at both things.
Yeah. And a couple of the good ones I know, I did like the scene with the Mayans. One, I thought the Mayans sequence was very funny.
Yeah.
Where they go in and they think they're going to be sacrificed, but they know it's the Mayan civilization, so there's going to be a lot to steal. And they can't find anything, but sure enough, they find something. They go up to the temple. They think like, oh, okay, this is it. We're going to get thrown off. They're like, oh no, we just want to watch the sunset. What do you guys think we want to do? But then they drop the stuff out of the pocket, like, oh, you're thieves? No, you're dead now. So like, I found that one engaging. I did find the English era with the Earl of Sandwich to be entertaining.
That
a little
was good.
cheesy, a little dopey, but I was entertained by it. Especially when Fiona comes in and they have the duel, and that kind of takes off. And I probably would have liked some kind of comedic closure to the whole like who invented the sandwich thing, and then the Earl died. But I was entertained by that. And then the other one, which was funny here because in the film, the sequence with King Agamemnon, who has this very profound mentor relationship on Kevin, was pretty early. And the original King Agamemnon, played by Sean Connery,
Right.
that had a very profound effect on Kevin. So this one with Mansa Musa, which is this African piece of royalty, and he's got gold beyond belief, and of course that tantalizes the time bands initially. But this guy also has this profound effect on Kevin as a mentor because he he's the only one that seems to appreciate Kevin's vast knowledge of history and all these random factoids where everyone else is always telling him he's boring or what was the vocalized blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah.
So those were the three that, and I honestly I didn't even that the caveman was this very nice pivotal turning point, which I didn't even think of as far as writing down here. But that was a very pivotal turning point as far as the story and finding Saffron.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the caveman thing was funny, just all the things that she had taught the people and how they were just completely changed by her being there. And yeah, I did like the Mansa Musa scenes. Just it was sweet how, you know, his parents are kind of, you know, brush him off and they're all into technology, don't really pay attention to him, don't share his love of history. And this was actually a place where he felt important and he could be himself, and Mansa Musa kind of leans into that, and then Kevin's like basically like, I wish you were my dad, I wish you were my parent. And I mean, like I feel like he kind of wanted to stay there, and the time bandits kind of convinced him otherwise, you know, especially Penelope, I think. But I easily could have seen him staying there and living with Mansa Musa, like in that world where he's important and he's loved and he's valued.
Which is exactly what what happens in the King Agamemnon sequence in the film is that he is happy, and then the bandits almost come in and kidnap him to just get on with their kind of flow, and he's outright upset at them for doing that because they just kind of he's like and he says to Randall, who was the original Penelope, he says like, I was happy, couldn't you have left me there, you know, this that and the third. So that, of course, that's kind of like the main sequence to me as far as going from the film to this series. Another one that I've noticed is the characters of the Supreme Being and pure evil. Interestingly enough, the evil in the original movie was played by David Warner, which there's a couple of films from that era that like I have a very distinct memory of this man throughout my childhood, because there's not only the original Time Bandits, but there was also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Secrets of the Ooze, and one of the Star Trek films. I want to say it was number 5. I want to say it was the 5th Star Trek film. So that actor had a very like iconic effect on movies of this era. And Taika Waititi in his films, he always even though he's the director or the writer and producer in some circumstances, he always inserts himself as a pivotal character in his projects. And in doing that, in playing the Supreme Being, it kind of had a different effect on this versus on that character in this versus the film, because in the film you don't see the Supreme Being until the very, very end, until the resolution. Whereas this one, he's kind of a consistent role throughout the film, throughout the series, excuse me.
I think, yeah, well, we see the big like face, you know, we see that right away, but don't we see the human form of Supreme Being in like, wasn't it like the end of the first episode or beginning of the second episode? So I mean, we saw him right away pretty much.
Yeah. And so like that's the what was so different of me what was so different for me of the interpretation. That's probably the word I should have used. The interpretation of the Supreme Being from original to re-envisioning.
Yeah, I mean, I think too of what I saw of the older one, like it did seem like the Supreme Being was like, wasn't he just like a very like straight man character? Like, I mean, like,
He was a very like clean cut older businessman.
Yeah, like to me, like Taika Waititi, his version, like the human form of Supreme Being is like sort of like a douchebag.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny because like I'm watching how he's portraying him, and I kind of almost wondered if this was kind of like Hollywood's spin on the God character being kind of a secular part of society that Hollywood is. Uh, eh, Kind of portraying him to be this selfish, conniving man who doesn't want the map back just for altruistic purposes, but he wants it for the same selfish, devious reasons that pure evil wants the map for, just, a kind of different side of the same bad coin. So I kind of, that was a weird part of the story arc to wrap my brain around, is the fact that you have good and evil, but in this show, they're kind of both evil.
Yeah, I mean, he was just sort of a jerk. Like he was just a sleaze bag. I mean, and then when he kind of pulls Kevin aside, then you're like, okay, he really is a sleaze bag. Like there's no misunderstanding him wanting to like destroy the earth. Like this is a real thing where like he really is just a douchebag.
Yeah, and it also, and to that point, like it also kind of takes away from the evil that is evil, because they kind of set up evil to be what he was in the film, but because the Supreme Being also has this side of evil to him, you kind of lose the effect of evil on the story. Like you kind of just forget that he's the bad guy, because in the film he's kind of like toying with them from afar. He's kind of like, there's one scene where I think he kicks up a storm. They're floating in the water or something. He kicks up a storm to mess with them. So you kind of take him out of the story as far as having an active role in the main characters throughout. And when they cut over to him, it's just kind of like, oh, this kind of bad guy over here that's got his own delusions of grandeur, but he doesn't really have a real effect on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's I wonder if Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, if they just kind of wanted to give, like, this was their interpretation of what the Supreme Being character should be. I mean, I thought that the pure evil character, like, I thought he was hilarious, and I feel like he was like a little more zany than the original pure evil. Like they're both kind of just like dumb, and that makes them silly.
Yeah.
But Jermaine Clement, I felt like even more so with his character. It was like they kind of turned it up to 11 or something with that character.
Yeah, he had like a lovable loser persona in this series. And his minions kind of, his minions, where you're right, I think he was kind of more funny in this than the film, but his minions weren't. His minions were kind of an afterthought, where in the film the minions were kind of oafs and amusing. They're like the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, I thought even just him being kind of a lovable loser, like you said, it kind of made him endearing. Like he's called pure evil, but you're like, he's not really that. Like, just the fact that he, like, I pretty much knew he was hilarious the first time he said Supreme Being, and he's like gagging like the Supreme
yeah, I can't say it.
Yeah, he can't say it. And then even how, Kevin's parents really didn't fear him. They're like, oh, it's not that bad here. Like, it's whatever.
Yeah,
like,
a nice guy.
Yeah, like they didn't even fear him. And like they would have stayed there. You know, if Kevin didn't come save them, they would have been like, oh, whatever, we'll stay here. But all for him zapping people away if they said something that was out of turn or something. But I mean, when you get down to it, he's just kind of like a silly guy. Like, he's not very evil.
We'll stay here wrapped up in these thorny saran wrap things. It's okay. Yeah. We don't take this guy seriously.
Yeah, I don't think anyone takes him seriously. And that's kind of the ironic and the funny part about it, is because he's this villain and he's painted as that. But I think they might have said it once, and I don't know if I was misunderstanding this, but are we to believe that pure evil was created by the Supreme Being?
Yeah.
That's okay. So I wasn't just imagining things. Like, I did hear that right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I think that was also true in the film as well.
I think they did definitely said it in the original.
So that was a bit more of a serious topic. So we'll get lighthearted and bring back a topic that we've kind of not done in the past couple episodes. Our quotes. There's a lot of comic relief in here. I mean, the original film was a bit of a comedy as well, and they didn't turn away from that. Taika Waititi has a bit of a comedic flow to his films. I mean, Jojo Rabbit was a film that was a pretty serious subject matter, and it was a very comical storytelling aspect to that. So what were some of your kind of favorite quotes from this? Because I wrote down everything. I marked everything I wrote down, but I feel like I definitely missed some that I probably laughed at while I heard it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wrote down more moments that were funny. Like, there were two quotes, like actual verbatim quotes wrote down. The Middle Ages, the sheriff says to Kevin, he refers to Kevin as a small person with window eyes. Because of his glasses.
Oh, his glasses, yes.
Like, he's just a small person with window eyes, because you're thinking of what like imagine a person in the Middle Ages looking at someone with glasses, and like they're trying to figure out a way to describe it. So I thought that was really funny. And then the joke that went on for like most of that episode was he's Kevin who carried the head, which that was just like, as that, like, a scene would go on and then like someone would mention it again. I was just like, oh my God, so funny that they keep like carrying on this joke, and then Kevin's just sitting there like, come on, like, no, like, oh, seriously?
Especially when they set up like brave dragon slayers and Kevin who just carried the head.
Yeah, I thought the Kevin who carried the head joke, that was a good one that went on, and it wasn't like annoying. Like, I thought it was funny as they kept like it was just kind of digging it in a little bit further to Kevin.
Yeah.
Poor Kevin.
One that I thought that was fairly early on that I thought kind of set the tone for the Bandits' rapport with each other was, I think it was it must have been in between the Lady Chung sequence and the Mayan sequence, and they land, and Judy and Penelope are poking fun at each other and talking about some vision where she had like some alternate vision of them, and she's like, yeah, Penelope and Widget, they also make all their customary mistakes, and Penelope snaps back, well, thanks Judy for your customary support and your sarcasm. Another one I thought was, Kevin was comparing Mansa Musa's wealth to something, and he's like, what? It's like, you've got to have more money than Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Of course, this guy's not going to know who that is. So you're like,
right.
Yeah, I am wealthier than the mighty Jeff Bezos of the Amazon.
Yeah, that was great.
You could see how they would interpret Amazon as the forest, not the company.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of it on that level, but they're like, oh yeah, like Jeff Bezos, and they're like, who's Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. Who is Jeff Bezos?
And then for me, it was just there were all these different moments that they kept kind of, well, the cave people scene, all the people saying like LOL out loud, and then like
Lol, lol.
YOLO. And then she said, like, oh, like, what about your parents or something? And she's like, they're like, what about YOLO? And she's like, oh, you only live twice?
Yeah, Yolt?
Yolt?
Is it Yolt?
Yeah, that was funny. And then there was like a gag where Penelope, when she first meets Kevin, she calls him everything but Kevin. She keeps getting his name wrong. And
Yeah.
it's to show that like she doesn't respect him, she doesn't care about him. And then the same thing happens with Saffron. She'll be like, Savlon, she gets her name wrong for a while. And then by the time that they get to the fortress, to confront pure evil, she says she addresses her as Saffron. So like you can see that, like a couple scenes ago she said Savlon, but now she's gotten to the point where she actually respects the kids and cares about them. So she knows their name and she calls them by it.
Which, to toss back to the Mansa Musa thing, that was also kind of a pivotal point in her own story arc, where to set them up to steal something, to make them feel like they're successful bandits, and she kind of doesn't take it, and then she reveals to them like, oh, it was enough that you at least cared enough about me to allow me to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was almost kind of a mutual respect at one point, where her getting their names right finally, and then them kind of being like, I know you care about this thievery, let me help you out and make you feel whole in some way.
Yeah. And then the last moment I had, you mentioned that the Earl of Sandwich thing was kind of like cheesy a little bit, but I thought it was hilarious when they're like, oh man, we need to get into this party, but like we're not wearing the proper clothes or something. So then then you see them walking in wearing bags of flour. Kevin had like his collar was like the top of the bag of flour, and then it was like the arms were cut. I thought that was hilarious. They're wearing these rags that are made out of like the cloth that the flour comes in.
Looking like a bunch of kids running potato sack races.
Yes.
One I thought, and then my last two, one I thought was just a little light moment when when Kevin with Mansa Musa, he meets the Sultan, and Mansa Musa says something like he's gonna share his wealth with everybody. So like, gold for everyone. And the Sultan, who's obviously a bit more stingier, goes like, and rubies for some of you. So I thought that was a pretty kind of dry humor moment.
Yeah.
And then the other one I thought was, which interestingly enough might set up our next topic, when they're with the cavemen, and when they first meet the cavemen, and Saffron's brother of the caveman, he only speaks in grunts. So Kevin goes,
yeah.
is that how Neanderthals communicate? And Saffron looks at him and she's like, no, it's how 13-year-olds communicate, racist. So I got a kick out of that one.
That was funny.
But speaking of social cues that kind of interject themselves from Hollywood into our shows, I wanted to touch on anything that maybe have rolled your eyes in this, because the first thing I noticed, of course, from this series when it started was the bandits aren't dwarves. So, and then I see the Randall character cast as Lisa Kudrow. So, can I get from the chorus? Smelly cat, smelly cat,
Smelly cat.
What
are they feeding you?
So not only did they do that, but they also recast all the bandits not as dwarfs, not as little people, whatever is the politically correct term to say. And I recently, through something completely unrelated, was reminded of a quote Peter Dinklage had years ago in relation to the Snow White remake, where he says, quote, I was a little taken aback by the fact that they were very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. The quote continues, you're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of seven dwarves living in the cave What the fuck are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I find it interesting that he refers to his own opinions as a soapbox. Continuing on, I guess I'm not loud enough. They were so proud of that and all the love and respect to the actress and the people who thought they were doing the right thing, but I'm just like, what are you doing? Dinklage added that Dinklage added that had a cool progressive spin been put on a fairy tale, he would have been, quote, all in. So I found it interesting that you have someone who is a little person has a problem with little people being cast in Hollywood, and then you have this show, which was based off something from 40 years ago, a prominent movie, and the prominent characters are all little people, and now there's no little people. So I kind of think like, is Peter Dinklage maybe just want to be the only little person employed by Hollywood?
I don't know. It's, you know what, I didn't know that because I didn't see the original till after I had finished the series. So I didn't know about, changing a male character to a female character. I don't agree with that. I just keep it the way it is. Like, why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But here's the thing with, as far as little people goes, the way that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? I had heard, or I looked up, when I was looking up the show before we started watching it, I think I found an article that said something about like, spoiler, there are no little people in this one. And I was like people were mad about it, right? But it's a touchy topic. It's kind of like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, because honestly, when I was watching, the original one and they had that initial scene where all the dwarves come in, like where he meets the time bandits, I honestly kind of felt like the way that they had them acting in the old movie, it was almost like they were kind of poking fun at them in a way.
Yeah, they're bumbling around a little bit.
Kind of like, oh, little, but like kind of just like not stereotyping them, but yeah, just kind of poking fun and making fun of them. And but then if you're not casting them, then you're casting normal sized people, then it's like you're putting them out of you're putting them out of a job, and to Peter Dinklage's point, like, oh well, then they don't have work. So it's like, I just think of those. I know I used to watch a show called Little Women LA on TLC, which is like a reality show about little people, all these females that live in LA. And one of them was a backup dancer for like Miley Cyrus or something. So but that's the thing. It's like, yes, you're getting work, but like you're kind of being poked fun at, like, oh, there's a midget on the stage, I just think that it's tough. It's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't cast them,
Yeah, like to put them up on a pedestal for nothing more than public amusement.
Yeah,
as opposed to an honest living, or well, I don't want to say that, but as opposed to just thinking that, hey, they're just doing a job.
Right, like it's not like you are an actor in this movie, it's like you're a circus freak, you know what I mean? Like it's putting them in that light. So like I don't know why they would invite that in some ways.
Yeah. Was there anything else in this that kind of came out of the woke department that made you kind of do a collective?
Oh my, I did the biggest eye roll, and you know what? I was so disappointed because this did not happen until the 9th episode. So I am thinking, oh, we made it through the show without anything being woke. Nope, almost.
So close.
So literally so close. And you know what it was is you know what, in my opinion, you're a great writer, like you're a great screenwriter, you're a great comedian, like anyone who writes anything, they're a great writer if no one can tell like how you lean politically in your work. Like there should be it's the same thing as like a newscaster should be objective. It's, a good writer, you shouldn't be able to tell whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent from your work, right? So obviously we talked before about Jermaine Clement being a great writer. You know, we've seen him do funny stuff, and he also, I don't know if it's him and or Taika Waititi, it might just be Jermaine, I'm not sure, but they also do that show on FX, which I have some friends who actually really like that show. It's like What We Do in the Shadows. It's like kind of a creepy show, but it's like supposed to be comedic. I know a lot of people enjoy that show. It's like critically acclaimed and everything, and there's been multiple seasons of it, but I know he's a great writer, but in the 9th episode, there was it was the part where they were in the 1300s. They had the people being like catapulted that had the plague. So that was when they were like in the streets and they're like dodging. They're like, oh, there's another one. We don't want to get the plague, blah, blah, blah. So then there's this guy that walks up and I don't know if he says something rude to them or something. And Penelope's like, oh, excuse me, we're just trying to avoid this sickness or whatever. So then the guy goes, oh, like, what's the problem? It's just like the flu. Like it's not a big deal, you know? And then so she goes, oh, well, you know, people are just dying, no big deal. And like, they have this whole little exchange and like, I knew from watching it, I was like, okay, well, I know by going on Jermaine Clement's Twitter feed that he is a raging liberal. And unfortunately, I looked at that, but I could tell because it was like they were making the bubonic plague equivalent to COVID. All the same things that right-leaning people were saying about COVID were like this guy that walked up to Penelope. So I was like, do we have to do this? Like,
yeah.
Like,
I thought we were past the whole COVID thing.
Right. I thought we were like 3 years past this, 3.5 years past this. Like, why are we beating this like a dead horse? Like, it's just not cool and it's not clever. Like, it's not funny. It's stupid. So
it wasn't cool when the shows came back after COVID and they kind of worked it into the story. It wasn't fun then. It's not fun to have a little subtle line in dialogue X years later. It's still not cool. Doesn't matter whether it's recent or years later.
And like, I just think of like, what if, you know, our generation, like if I had kids someday, what if my kid is watching this Time Bandit series on streaming and is like, what are they talking about? You know, like it just seems like it's such a timely reference that was just like not needed, not necessary. Like it's just, it reminds me of just people on the left having to put a dig in there for no reason, like that Pop-Tart movie that Jerry Seinfeld wrote or whatever. Like it takes place in the 60s or 70s, but he's putting all these like references to like, you know, current elections and things. To modern day. And it's like, why would you do that? Like that wink, wink aside of something that's going on currently when it's supposed to, like, there's no reason for it. Like you're just inviting a fight for no reason.
Yeah. No, not necessary. Doesn't fit into the flow. And someone's gonna watch, and like you said, someone's gonna watch this years later and not know what it's in reference to because they didn't live it. And they're like, and then maybe they do a little historical digging. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't belong in here.
It's just like, it's way after the fact. And like, I'm sorry to say, but it's just lame. Like, don't do it. It's stupid.
Don't.
It does not have my seal of approval. My seal of disapproval. Like if that hadn't been in there, I would have felt probably a lot differently about the show as overall.
Yeah. Well, something that did not have my seal of approval for sure was the ending. One giant WTF on the ending. So the map was not used as a pawn in the original film. It was an item that not necessarily had a lot of power, but had a lot of gravitas, for lack of a better word. And by the end of it, it simply went back to Supreme Being. And it's like, yeah, that's mine. It goes back in its box and, on display in a museum or some kind of Indiana Jones stuff or whatever. But it was not as it's portrayed in this series as something Kevin is being forced to choose whether he's going to give it to the Supreme Being, whether he's going to give it to evil, and then they're both playing the puppet master and manipulating towards who to give it to. So, and of course, we find out that then Kevin plays this little trick of his own, and they swap the lunch boxes around, so he gives it to evil, but evil winds up not getting it. So, and then of course we get to the end, and they're like, okay, well, we got it right here. They open up and it's just a blank piece of paper. And we went into the show thinking this was a limited series. It's just a re-envisioning of the film, of the original film. So that makes you think like, okay, is this a limited series or are they setting up another season? Like, what's going on here? You can't just have the map disappear and be a blank piece of paper. It's the whole pivotal object from the story.
Yeah, I had a lot of thoughts when I saw that blank map. One thing I thought of was, okay, when it was blank, I was like, okay, they're definitely setting this up for another season. Like, first of all. Second of all, what if nobody really stole it per se? What if it's just something about like the map is now blank because of like what Kevin did? Like, is it like a butterfly effect? Like, did the map get erased for some reason? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought of. And then I looked it up, and apparently Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement have really thought about what they want to do with like where they want to take this, and like they do have a plan in place already. Like they're thinking about what they want to do for season 2. And like I saw an interview where they were saying that, look, our intent was not to make a carbon copy of the film. Like basically they have their own ideas of what to do with it, because being on TV, actually, you have, I mean, that's 10 hours or so that you have to do with something versus 2 hours or even 3 hours if it's a very long movie. So yeah, it sounds like they have a plan, and I guess we'll see if it gets picked up for season 2.
Yeah, and you know what? In that light, I may enjoy future seasons more because at that point, then you just have this first season that was kind of a mix between their own vision and callback to certain things from the film. But now that they've kind of addressed all that, they move forward, and now it's completely all theirs. Like this is all their own story now. They've already done everything that's supposed to be in reference to the original. That's in the box, put away, done.
Right.
Now it's all their vision. So that would kind of make me back on the train as far as watching future installments of this, because now I know it's not trying to copy or compare to anything. It's theirs. This is their story now, and that's it. So I could just watch that and not constantly go back and forth between what's in my memory banks.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, at least if they have a chance to, I don't want to say rewrite it, but kind of write their own story. I mean, we'll see where they take it. So obviously I would assume that, Kevin and Saffron trickle into this second season. I would assume it's, the fact that there's this unresolved issue of the map. Like, I can't see them just being like, okay, we're gonna have the time bandits visit some other kid in his bedroom or some other girl in her bed. Like, I can't see them having like a different kid for the next season or something. I'm sure it'll be Kevin.
And speaking of Kevin and Saffron, the other thing that didn't necessarily match up to me, and kind of by the end of it, I didn't exactly have the best opinions, didn't match up for the film, were the parents. Because in the original, the parents were not these lovable oafs that Kevin was proud to save. They were like the Dursleys in Harry Potter. They were kind of grumbly, borderline mean adults, and they kind of didn't treat Kevin very well. And they get turned to coal pretty early on in the series, and then it's a pivotal point of the story to save them. In the film, they didn't get turned to coal till the end, because the lump of coal that the Supreme Being turned evil into was in the microwave, and they open up the microwave because the house burns down. They open up the microwave and they look at it, and Kevin's like, "No, don't touch it, don't touch it." And of course, they don't respect their kids, so they reach in there. Now they're gone, and then the lead firefighter, who's Sean Connery again, drives off and says like, "Oh, good luck, kid." And he just leaves this kid sitting on the front lawn with his parents turned to dust. Uh, so that was the other thing that I kind of so like I was like did Taika Waititi kind of have a soft spot for shitty parents and rewriting this whole arc of the parents?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I mean, I did find them to be pretty unlikable. Like,
Yeah,
you
they're always
know, yeah, and it was just sad. Like the way that they were obsessed with technology and just, a lot of that just human interaction wasn't there. Like I could see I mean, unfortunately, it's relatable because I could see parents turning into that if they're not already, in
Mhm.
this time where just, it's more about playing games on your phone. I don't know what people play now, Candy Crush, like who the hell knows. But kind of choosing that, a little screen over your kid and being attentive and being all there with your attention. So yeah, I mean, I feel like they were redeemed a little bit in like the scenes of them, when they went back in time and their mother was like 6 years old and Saffron was playing with her. And then when Kevin kind of was hanging out with his dad and they were doing a dance to Jamiroquai, Virtual Insanity. And I mean, that was kind of redeeming to see them as kids to be like, okay, so they do have some like love in their hearts. They're not total cold, like
Zombies.
yeah, and it's like it's more I think they say also that like, oh, we don't understand our kids. I think there's a scene in the end where I don't know if it's they send them back when they're saved and they see like, I don't know if pure evil like provides a view into like what they're doing now. And I think they say to each other, like, yeah, we don't understand our kids. Or they're saying Kevin would love this show. Yeah, this is boring, but Kevin would love it. And they're like, yeah, we don't understand our kids. And like that made it a little bit more understanding the fact that it wasn't like we don't like Kevin because he's boring. It was like, okay, like my child likes these things that I can't really relate to, but like that's okay. Like I recognize that he would love this because I know him and I know what he likes. Like it kind of I feel like throughout the course of the show, it kind of redeemed them a little bit, but I mean, overall, they weren't extremely likable.
Yeah, and to tie two things together, as you spoke earlier about a good writer, you can't tell where they fall on the political spectrum. I noticed things like that in writing in this context, where I almost wonder if they're trying to put in these subtle notes to kind of turn society back around and not be so reliant on technology, because it's almost like there's a hidden theme here where you see someone portrayed on the screen as being obsessed with their phone and not genuinely engaging in human contact. And you look at that and you interpret like, wow, that really is unappealing. And then they start
Yeah,
to be introspective, like, oh, I'm like that, or that's how I'm raising my kids. And you almost kind of wonder if there's trying to like an inception, a seed being implanted to kind of course correct society to not be so reliant on
maybe.
the bullshit anymore.
Maybe. I mean, that would be great if it were like a moral of the story. I mean, I can't imagine that, some of these people in Hollywood, left-leaning people in Hollywood
Mhm.
would want to, portray that lesson to people. But I mean, I think we need more of that. Like, yeah, I mean, you saw it in a negative light, the way that they're obsessed with technology. So you're like, oh, I don't want to ever become like that. I hope I'm not never a parent like that. And I mean, we need more of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think liberal Hollywood would want to do that either, but as the expression goes, a broken clock is right twice a day. So of course the big question now is wrapping this up, and obviously it's interesting to know that there is an actual thought process to continuing this. But I mean, what did we think? You watched this completely blind to the original. I watched the original several times as a child, and I had rewatched it again just to refresh my memory. So, what did you think of this?
I generally liked it. I thought it was funny, it was witty, it was well written, and I mean, yes, I did watch the original after, so I think obviously because the new one was the only one that I knew, I was more comfortable with that. I was like, "Oh, this is modern." I was like, "The old one's kind of like outdated and it's, shot
Icky,
it's
icky old
shot in
stuff.
yeah, it's shot with what looks like my cell phone camera from 10 years ago, and it just, I don't know. I just I mean, that being said, the special effects were not that bad for 1981 as I was expecting. But
10 years
no,
ago, your cell phone was probably still pretty advanced, by the way.
I know. That's what's weird to think about. But yeah, I mean, I generally liked it. I mean, I'll watch the second season. I I think I liked the vibe of it more. Like it was a little bit more like wacky, I guess. But I don't know, like that was just, it kind of hit my funny bone a little bit more than the older one did.
Yeah, and like I found the callbacks to be brief or non-existent at all, which I, go aside from everything we already discussed as far as agree or disagree with things. I kind of can at least give Taika credit with having his own creative spin on this and knowing that they have ambitions to continue it. I can accept it a little bit more that the callbacks were so brief, were so minimal, or I don't want to say minimal, but were so peripheral. I can kind of accept that a little bit more, knowing that they have plans to expand upon the story. That they was just kind of like, let's just acknowledge the original one, acknowledge what our story is based off of, but then get on with the horse and cart and tell our own story. So I can accept that a little bit more, knowing that. And I don't have as hard of a time looking past what I would have originally interpreted as a disrespect, for lack of a better word, to paying homage to the original film.
Yeah. And I think especially knowing that they were like, okay, this is our interpretation. Like, we're not trying to make a new version of that film in 2024. Like, we're kind of putting our own spin on it. And like, I think that's, of course, when you have the rights to something, like, you can kind of do what you want with it. And I guess the original guy who made the 1981 film was slighted by that, and he was kind of angry that this one was coming out. And I think he was involved to a point, but then it kind of was out of his hands and he wasn't involved anymore. And I think he's kind of bitter about what was done with it. But I mean, I guess if you're going to have the rights, you have the power to do what you want. So it's open to your interpretation and what things you want to exclude, what things you want to include, what you want to change. It is what it is.
Well, we have the rights to this show, and hopefully when we leave you open to interpretation, you can leave us some kind words and drop a 5-star rating if you're listening on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As well as iHeartRadio and Google Podcasts if audio is your choice of podcast consumption. Or if it's video-wise and you want to see the sparkling ginger hair, you can follow and sub on both YouTube and Rumble for that as well. Follow along with us on Instagram and TikTok. My co-host here is Binge the Ginge. That is dots between the words on Instagram and all one word on TikTok. And I am Nutmeg 2 Palmetto, all one word, and that is the number 2. And we won't tease another episode because this is the end of season 1. So that's 23 episodes. It's been a heck of a ride for season 1. What's your reflection on our inaugural season?
Oh man. For me, it feels like it's been 23 years, but at the same time, it feels like 23 days since we started this. Like it's just, ironically, we're talking about time bandits today, but like the passage of time has been really crazy this past year. Like I can't believe it's been this long, but like it also seems like it was just yesterday.
Time is a social construct, my friend. Time is a social construct. Well, we will be back for season 2 sometime after Labor Day. And until then, we're going to take a much needed R&R break from breaking down all your streaming favorites and figure out what we're going to talk about next. So until the next season of Red and Red Real Reviews, this is Red and Red. We are signing out.
All right.
Ready? Taika Waititi's re-envisioning live up to the original. Oh, sorry, I couldn't read it for a second. Sorry, I don't mean to seem scatterbrained. This is where being from Connecticut hurts you because there's a lot of those soft, hard sounds in the middle of a word.
Oh, like consonants.
Bandits.
I mean, you're not gonna say like Waititis. Like you're not gonna pronounce like.
No, that one's easy.
Bandits.
Yeah,
Bandits.
Exactly. Red and Red Real Reviews jumps through some portals, break down Apple TV's limited Said TV twice. Looking away from the camera would screw me up on that one. Oh shit, I forgot my notepad.
Oh no.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world. And you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What?
Do what?
I'd like to be pimps from Oakland or cowboys from Arizona, but it's not Halloween.
Let the dogs out, you know, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
Slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
Grow up, Peter Pan. Count Chocula.
X never, ever marks the spot.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
All right. Then you do us proud. Because I don't want no scrubs.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness. You weren't on any mercy mission.
Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
X marks the spot.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Peace! Smile, you son of a...
Toodaloo, motherfucker.
Hey, you ain't too proud to beg.
Come on!
What?
It's not funny anymore.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to be references. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night, we will not vanish without a fight, we're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.